Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Committee Adjustment for November 20th, 2024. The committee members in attendance this evening are Kevin Antonitis, Danielle Collins, Fabia Billing, and myself, Adam Ottershead. Committee member Dylan Bailey sends his regrets, but he may be joining us later in the meeting. Staff members present this evening are Walter Basic, Deputy Director of Planning, Terry Donya Edwards, Supervisor of Planning, Dilhara Avawardanan, Administrative Coordinator.
I got it.
Live streaming. Members of the public are advised. Okay. Live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly or visually recorded during the meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. The purpose of the application and the relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. To request a copy of the decision, please email Dilhara Avawardanan, Secretary Treasurer at coa@grimsby.ca. The applicant, the Town of Grimsby, the minister, or a specified person or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the date of giving notice under subsection 17 is completed for a consent application, and within 20 days of the date of decision for a minor variance application. Specified persons and certain public bodies include public utilities but do not include an individual or community association. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions to the chair. Each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak. Each participant may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please not duplicate the remarks. When you are called, we ask you to state your name and address for the record. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda tonight and are familiar with the lands that are subject to the applications. Is there any members of the committee who have a pecuniary interest with respect to the applications before us this evening? Oh, seeing none. Is there any withdrawal or adjournment? No. Okay, 0. Have committee members had the opportunity to review the minutes of October 15th, 2024? Okay, I have a motion here. Moved by Dan, seconded by Kevin. Resolved that the minutes of the meeting held on October 15th, 2024 be approved. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Opposed, if any? That's carried. So we have 3 applications for us tonight. The first one is 836-24 for 14 Teeter Place. Dara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just get the presentation up. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to construct a single-family dwelling, and the variances requested are to permit a minimum side yard setback of 0.9 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is required, and to permit a maximum building depth of 21.44 meters, whereas 20 meters is required. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice of hearing. And this is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. And this is what is proposed on site. So you have some images of the elevations. And these are the agencies that have provided comments, and I will summarize those comments for you now. So the planning staff have reviewed the application in the context of the 4 tests set out under Section 45 of the Planning Act, and are of the opinion that the minor variance meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is appropriate for the development of the lands, and is minor in nature. Public Works staff have no comments and 1 condition. That is, town staff will require lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. The plan shall include all proposed downspout discharge locations, all hardscape surfaces such as driveways, walkways, patios, etc., and all physical features including hydrants, decks, etc. for both existing and proposed. The plan shall also note the location of the existing services, that is water, sanitary and storm, to property line and the extension of services to the building face. Niagara Region and the NPCA had no comments. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the agent or the applicant? You want to just come in to give your name and address? And, yep, the podium. Thanks. Just anything to add?
Right here? All right. All right, there we go. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff, forgive me, my voice is a little hoarse. I'm just getting over that thing that's going around that everyone's catching. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have with respect to the submitted application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none, does the committee have a motion on this application and the reasons therefore? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I find it resolved that minor variance application A3624 for 14 Teeter Place to permit a minimum side yard setback of 0.9 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is required as per section 7.2, table 11 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, and to permit a maximum building depth of 21.44 meters, whereas 20 meters is required as per section 7.2, table 11 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, be approved with conditions. And the condition is that town staff require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. The plan shall include all proposed downspout discharge locations, all hardscape surfaces such as driveways, walkways, patios, etc., and all physical features including hydrants, decks, etc., for both existing and proposed. The plan shall also note the location of the existing services, water, sanitary, storm, to property line and the extension of services to the building face. And my reasons is that it meets the 4 tests outlined in the notes by the town staff.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a seconder on that?
Yep, I can second that.
Okay, thanks. So moved by Dan and seconded by Kevin that the application be approved with conditions. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed, if any. So your application approved. It was subject to a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you. So our next application is A37-24 for 76 Main Street West. Delhara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this application is to legalize the use of the basement and first story of the building as a daycare. And the variance requested is to permit the daycare use in the basement and first story of the building, whereas the daycare use is only permitted at or above the second story. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. And the daycare location is at the back here. This is an image of the current conditions on site. And these are the agencies that have offered comments, and I will summarize those comments for you now. So planning staff have reviewed the application in the context of the 4 tests set out under sections 45 of the Planning Act and are of the opinion that the minor variance meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is appropriate for the development of the lands, and is minor in nature provided the condition is met. The condition is that no changes are made to the site resulting in the removal or alteration of parking, loading, or garbage facilities or other development. Public Works staff have no comments or conditions. NPCA commented to say that as no flooding or erosion concerns are associated with this building, the NPCA would offer no objections to the minor variance to permit the usage conversion. The NPCA cautions that interior renovations require permit from our officers at this address. The region commented that a daycare use is considered an institution use in accordance with O Regulation 15304. The town's chief building official should be satisfied that the site condition is appropriate for an institutional use, given the site's use for commercial purposes. Regional staff differ to the CBO as to whether a record of site condition is required. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant or agent for the property here?
Yes, they're online.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. My name is Adil Gill. I'm the owner of the property, and I'm here if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks. Can you just state your address for the record, please?
It's 76 Main Street, Grimsby, Ontario, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the application? Seeing none, do I have a motion on this application and the reasons therefore?
I can do this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that, resolve that minor variance application A3724 for 76 Main Street West to permit the daycare use in the basement in the first story of the building, whereas the daycare use is only permitted at or above the second story as per section 811, Table 2 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, be approved with conditions. The conditions were as follows, suggested as follows, that no changes are made to the site resulting in the removal or alteration of parking, loading, or garbage facilities or other development. The reasons being they meet the 4 tests as outlined in the Planning Act.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder on this motion? Fabia? Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed, if any. So the application was approved, sir, and it's subject to a 20-day appeal period before it becomes final and binding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We highly appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
So our next and final application tonight is B07-24 for 624 Ridge Road West. Dehara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to adjust the lot lines boundaries onto existing lots by severing 0.405 hectares of land shown as parcel 1 in the figure and retain 10.32 hectares of land shown as parcel 3 in the figure. On the next slide, that is. 614 Ridge Road West is shown as parcel 2 in the attached figure. The retained lands and the adjacent lands are proposed to be merged, resulting in a combined 10.858 hectare lot. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice of hearing. This is a picture of the neighborhood for context. And this is the current conditions on site. These are the agencies that have responded. And I will summarize the comments for you now. Planning staff have no objections to the approval of the consent application as long as 2 conditions are met. That the address change fee be submitted to the town of Grimsby for municipal addressing to be assigned to the severed lot. That an opinion letter from the applicant's legal representative confirming that the lands of parcel 2 and parcel 3 have merged be provided to the town. The opinion letter shall include any new legal descriptions and pins. Public Works staff have a few comments and 1 condition. The comments are, the applicant shall be advised that a proposed lot grading and drainage plan will be required at the time of building permit application for the future single detached dwelling on the severed lands for review and approval by town staff. The applicant shall be advised that an entrance permit will be required to construct any future driveway access onto Ridge Road West for review and approval by town staff. And the condition they have is that town staff will require a topographic survey showing the existing contours and elevations for the lots and surrounding area to the satisfaction of town staff. The region has the following comment. NEC staff are satisfied that the application conforms to NEP policies and subject to the following conditions: that a new sewage system permit is applied for and installed, meeting current building code requirements to service the new dwelling on 1 acre parcel; that the development permit contain the following archaeological warning clause: should deeply buried archaeological remains or resources be found during construction activities, all activities impacting archaeological resources must cease immediately, and the proponent must notify the Archaeology Programs Unit of the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism and contact a licensed archaeologist to carry out an archaeological assessment in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act and the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists. In the event that human remains are encountered during construction, all activities must cease immediately, and the Niagara Regional Police, as well as the Cemeteries Regulation Unit of the Ministry of Public and Business Services Delivery, must be contacted. In situations where human remains are associated with archaeological resources, the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism should also be notified to ensure that the site is not subject to unlicensed alterations, which would be a contravention of the Ontario Heritage Act. And finally, the NPCA says for the boundary adjustment, as no new lots will be created, the NPCA offers no objections. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I see you've got staff at the podium. You want to offer some comment?
Yeah, thank you, through Chair. I just need to make one correction. The second condition that was requested in the staff memo, so the condition reads that the lots have been merged, or the lands have been merged. It should say that the lands will merge, because we can't clear the condition until the condition needs to be cleared before we can divide the land. It's just the order of operation.
Okay, perfect.
Walter, sorry, I have a question too. Should the four conditions that we usually have for lot severances apply to this one as well? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. There's standard conditions. They're clerical and administrative. Yeah.
Yeah, just we're going to get those conditions. Just 1 second.
Okay, so these are the four conditions for the lot severance. That the applicant provide the Secretary Treasurer with deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel, a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the issuance of the certificate of consent. That the final certificate fee payable to the town of Grimsby be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. That all conditions of consent be fulfilled within 2 years from the date of the notice of decision pursuant to subsection 5341 of the Planning Act, failing which this consent shall be deemed to be refused. And finally, subsection 3 or 5 of section 50 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, shall apply to any subsequent conveyance or transaction involving the severed land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant or agent here and wishes to speak to the application? Thanks. Yeah, just come to the podium and just give your name and address for the record, please. And if you have any comments on any of the conditions, we'd appreciate that too. Thanks.
Yeah, my name is Mark Presti. I'm 152 Ridge Road West in Grimsby. Mr. Chair, members of committee staff, thank you for the review of the application. I do have a question. So if I understand, the boundary readjustment has some minor conditions around it, which were just read, and then the other conditions were around constructing a dwelling on that 1 acre parcel, is that correct?
Yeah, just as they were read out from the comments from the agencies.
Sure, okay. Yeah, that was just really my only two questions on that, so. Any questions for me?
Is there any questions from the committee to the delegate? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak in regards to this application? Seeing none, is there a motion from the committee on the dispositions application and the reasons therefore? Fabia, go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. The one condition from the region, or the conditions from the region, reference conditions of a development permit with the Niagara Escarpment Commission. They shouldn't be conditioned. I want to make sure there isn't a confusion that those conditions are requested as a condition of the consent. They're going to be requested as a condition of the development permit.
Yeah.
And they can't be implemented through the consent process anyway, because they can't be implemented until after the construction begins anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Council members, I need all those conditions. I need them clarified. I have the ones on the back here. So how am I reading this off?
Well, we can read. You can read them out again if you want,
Okay.
or you can just. Yeah. Do you need the conditions to be repeated, sir, or are you pretty clear on them?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty clear. The boundary readjustment has a set of conditions around, and then there's, as it just was mentioned, there's conditions for development, right?
Yeah. No, actually, would be the standard sort of consent, just showing that you have to produce the legal paperwork and everything like that,
Sure.
just to satisfy that. As staff stated, the conditions related to development or have to do with the Niagara Escarpment Commission, nothing with us. So.
Very good. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to have it resolved that consent application B07-24 for 624 Ridge Road West to adjust the lot lines boundaries on two existing lots by severing .405 hectares of land shown as parcel 1 in the figure attached and retain 10.32 hectares of land shown as parcel 3 in the figure attached. 614 Ridge Road West is shown as parcel 2 in the attached figure. The retained lands and the adjacent lands are proposed to be merged, resulting in a combined 10.858 hectare lot. This be approved with conditions. And the conditions are as follows.
You don't have to read them out if you don't want to.
Great, thanks.
Save you some time.
Off the hook. So I move that this be carried and approved with conditions.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder on that?
I can second that.
Dan beat you to it. Okay, any further discussion on this application? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed, if any? So your application was approved, and it's subject to the appeal period. Thank you. So that concludes our applications for tonight, and next order of business is process improvements regarding committee of adjustment. What's that? Yeah, members of the public, if you want to actually. Okay. Floor is yours.
Great. Great, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about this. So just for a little bit of history again, you made a notice of motion, I believe, in September, and then that went to council as a correspondence item, I believe in early October, and their decision was to have staff report back with some process improvements. So some staff have had an opportunity to talk to Adam, and I know there's been some conversations with some of you, but maybe not all of you. So we wanted to come to you tonight to just talk about some potential process improvements that we could make that will help the committee function. So essentially, one of the key things in that notice of motion was really enhancing council's awareness of the reasoning for the COA decision. So, sorry, I'll say COA if that's okay. It's so long, otherwise I use acronyms, sorry. So the legal opinion that we had said that the Committee of Adjustments role really ends with the decision. So once you make your decision, your role ends. So a key thing that they suggested that we enhance the notices of decision so that it's very clear why you made the decision that you made and any reasoning that you took into account, or if something happened, that you sort of detail what influenced your decision. So it's clear instead of just talking about the 4 tests. The 4 tests, of course, should be in that notice, but having more information. And then they also suggested, I know in a previous conversation with Adam, we talked about potentially going into closed session so you could lay out some potential reasonings and rationale for what your decision is. But since then, we've talked to our lawyers again. There's been conversations, but they've suggested let's keep things open so it's just very clear and there's no challenges from that perspective. So we're recommending that we revise some of our templates to better inform council with our agenda. We're going to be looking at our agenda templates, the minutes and decision notices templates to make sure that they're clear and they provide as much information as possible. So we'll be looking at a variety of municipalities just to see what is on there. I'll just pause just to make sure that sounds reasonable, or or you have any thoughts on that. Oh, sorry.
All right, sorry. We're talking about September, because I wasn't here in October. So we're talking about September, and in particular, which application are we talking about?
It was a notice of motion that the committee made to ask for some correspondence to be put on council's agenda.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
So it's not a particular application. This is writ large about processing and stuff like that. Were there any other thoughts? Templates, we can change them. That sounds reasonable? Yes?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could make a comment, I think it would help to have detailed minutes too, especially where there's a controversial file. I think it helps if council's doing something about the decision, if they want to support us or not, or ignore it, whatever. I think without watching the video, I think if it's controversial, they should watch the video, which we have now. We never had that in the past, as long as I've been on. But then also have detailed minutes, right? So many people spoke against or for it for various reasons, blah, blah, blah. In theory, I think, you could read them and say, yeah, they supported the application or opposed it. They voted it down. But I think having a little more detail in the minutes would help. Maybe some of the issues that came out, that's maybe to our staff, right? Some of the issues that were people focused on in their, when they came up to the podium and started going on about it. I think it's helpful if that's relayed in the minutes too. So that's for Dahara more than you necessarily, but.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to add to that because I kind of looked at different municipalities and even the sort of, I'll call them medium-sized ones, I'm not going to say for sure it was Burlington, but something of that size. They have very detailed minutes. It'll say, Mrs. Smith objected to the application for this reason or that reason. So I think that will help the process, definitely. Thank you.
Just to clarify, we've talked to our clerks, and they cannot be a transcript of every single word that was said.
100%. No, it's not meant to be a transcript.
High level, yes.
Right, yeah, exactly.
If I just might add, again, that's really why we record the meetings. So if anybody wants to see the details of the discussion, that's the appropriate venue or document to view to see what discussions transpired. The minutes are supposed to only have the resolution, right? What's important is to make sure that the reasons for the decision are voted on by all the members. So the decision and the reasons for the decision should be in the resolution, right? So you may have one individual member that has a specific reason why they voted a certain way. A different member might have a different reason why they voted a certain way. But that doesn't speak for the committee. That speaks for the individual members of the committee and why they voted and how they voted. It's important for everybody, especially council, to understand what the consensus is of the committee. The committee speaks as a whole, not as individuals, right? So the committee speaks through its resolutions, and that's it. That's the only advice I give, because if you read through the minutes and you say somebody said one of the committee members asked a question or gave an opinion, it's not reflected in the resolution and it doesn't have any weight, if you know what I mean.
No, I agree, but I think minutes are also, if you look at the definition, they're more to capture the, I'm not going to say the essence of the meeting, whatever you want to call it. I think it's not just a resolution in the minutes. I think you can say, discussion was held regarding the issues that were raised by Mrs. Smith or whoever, or a neighbor. You can just say, leave it blank without putting a name in it.
Right.
Right? That the committee gave weight to, the evidence and also considered staff report, blah, blah, blah. But there's a number of things. It's not meant to be a transcript, I agree, but I think the minutes are not just a resolution.
Exactly, and well, that's what they're supposed to be. That's what the clerks tell us. They're supposed to be just the resolutions, because they're supposed to be a reflection of what the direction of the committee is as a whole, not individual members of the committee. The committee speaks as a group by consensus. And what we've run into in the past when pros were written about what transpired in the meeting, a lot of stuff was lost in the translation. And you really don't get the nuances unless you watch the video. So if anybody's really interested, they should be directed to watch the video, and then you can see all the discussions that took place and the nuances that were discussed about the application and why certain things were said relative to what other people said. So I think it's really important to, and because otherwise you're relying on somebody's interpretation of what was said, not actually what was said. But the committee, I just want to make it clear that the committee speaks as a whole through consensus. And that has to be by something that you vote on, which is the resolution. So the resolution, if you need to make it clear why you voted a certain way, it has to be in the resolution. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So whatever we come up with, we will definitely be looking at other municipalities. We'll be going through our legal, and we will also be going through our clerk's department to make sure everything is completely kosher from every perspective to make sure. Okay, were there any other thoughts on the revised templates? No?
No, I was just going to add about the minutes.
I'm so
Actually,
sorry.
if you look back to our minutes from like 2021, you'll see that they kind of do have that kind of overview. And it was only, just looking at this one, it's from July 20th. And I mean, this is when we had electronic meetings at the same time. It just gives a brief overview of everything like that. And like I say, I mean, we don't expect it to be a transcript, but it kind of can be a more objective record because, well, we may put something in a decision if, say we oppose something and we put why we supported opposing it, and we don't talk anything about what the applicant said. The minutes actually serve as that more objective hearing record. And I know everyone can go to the video, but sometimes with these meetings, I know council members probably just don't have the time to go because they have a 500-page agenda ahead of them already. So,
we'll definitely look at all examples. So, and if you run across ones, just email them to Dilhara or myself, and we'll look at those as well. The next thing we're looking at is a committee to prepare reasoning prior to. So, if you're visiting the site and you're like, oh, okay, that's something I really want to note. Maybe that's something to just jot down so you come prepared.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Also, as a result of if of the evidence you hear, you can take notes and stuff like that. It's just like different ways that you can make notes. And the other thing that the lawyer talked about was that when the OLT looks at the decisions and it comes to an appeal, they really look at the planning policy and principles. So that is one of their key components that they look at when they're making a decision. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have a reasoning and you just like what the owner said, it still has to reflect current planning principles and policies. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on, but I just wanted to make that note. Does that sound reasonable or just an opportunity?
I guess the question comes down to, are they looking at a hearing de novo? They're starting completely from scratch, don't care what we did, other than it's sitting in front of them now, and they're hearing it brand new. So in theory, they should be hearing from neighbors, staff, anybody else, but they don't necessarily. But I guess people have a right to, right, to attend. If they're given notice, they can be added to the OLT list. They sign up here. If they know it's going a certain way, then really they have a chance to have another kick at it with a fresh panel, whether it's a panel of one or whatever, right? So it's not like they're taking our decision, weighing it into their decision, right? It's completely fresh.
The one thing is, it goes back to council's understanding. So what you were looking at. So there's two layers to that decision, right? So this is how council looks at their representation for the case, if it is appealed, and also what the OLT. So they might not read it, they might not care, but it's still there and it's documented as to why some of the rationale that the committee collectively used to make their decision. Okay, so the next thought we had was deciding an open session, which I think, Adam, we talked extensively about that. So we're all good on that one. So, okay. And one of the other things we thought about is having a list of potential reasons created in the background, so you can just sort of pick from them in case it might be hard to do it every single time. But if we have just a standard list that you can pick from, then you're not rewriting the thing every single time. So that's something we can probably collectively come together with just having a list that you can use in your back pocket should you need that. So do you think those items might help with enhancing council awareness?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it would be helpful to also train this committee, on minor variances, what they are, what is minor, there's all that training that I was going to say IRWA, but it's wrong association, that whatever this association is, it puts on, but sometimes they don't have those topics specifically. They have very other good ones, but somebody new to this committee that comes on for the first time has no clue what they're talking about. No offense, that's just new to them subject-wise. So I think a training session talking about what you're here to decide and what goes into a good decision would be helpful. Even case law, like examples of what was appealed and why, and right from another body that's been doing it for a longer time. And then, yeah, I think maybe some suggestions of, but even having those things like what is minor, we've given minor variances for a reduction down to 0, right? Because in the scheme of things, it was considered minor in the overall picture. But if someone sat there and go, that's not minor, that's 100% reduction, how can that be minor, right? So those things are new to a lot of panel members and perhaps council too, when they see this, what's the committee doing, right? If they don't like our decision that we do approve, right? Not like the other case where it was the other way around, but so. And the public too go, what are you guys talking about? That's not minor. And we get told by public, because now they're all Googling what a minor variance is and reading it back to us, right? So I think that training part would help, specific to what things to consider, and right, that would be very helpful at the start of a new term.
Thank you, Kevin. You actually took the words out of my mouth, because that was the next section.
That was our next part.
That was my whole next section. So enhanced training for COA members was definitely something we were thinking as well. So it's AOCA. There's some online training that's probably more like entry kind of thing for most people, but it might have like different changes in legislation as well, because as we know, Planning Act is changing constantly, so it's good to just keep abreast of that. So we were thinking of having that available to committee members would be a positive solution. Another thing that we were talking about is quarterly closed sessions, where it's just a workshop, and they don't have to be, if you don't need it, you don't have to have it, but just having sessions that is with staff to go through, like we're doing an official plan right now. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming forward that might influence what you're talking about. There's a ton of provincial, like the provincial planning statement has just changed. The Planning Act has been changing a lot in the last 2 years or so. We could have legal come. We can talk about some of the review of some of the previous OLT decisions and how we could look at that differently. We can strategize the agenda, but those are just some of the possible topics that we could work through. But having those quarterly workshops that are not on the actual COA agenda, but just scheduled a different night, so we could just have a closed session meeting. I'm just wondering how that would be received.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
And then the other thing was focusing training, so a little bit more training, like maybe going to the seminars or conference, just smaller number. It is a cost, a definite cost that we have to keep our budgets low. So we can look at that potentially more at the beginning of the term or find different ways to make sure everybody's on the same level and properly trained for that. Is there any other training or other considerations that you guys would want us to consider?
I was just going to suggest about the training because I guess it was last year, we all went. And it's kind of good that we all go, but if budget is, what it is, maybe have a policy where maybe 2 people go each year or something like that, or, change it so that you have a couple people going and they can sort of bring back what they learned from the conference to everyone else.
Yeah, we can definitely try and do that. Budget was a little tighter this year, so wasn't in the cards this year, but we can definitely look at it going forward as how we can try and squeeze that in, because those conferences, they're long and they're always never here, clearly. They're never here, so there's always a lot of cost inherent to those. Okay, and then the other thing that was brought up and discussed was processes during the meetings. So one of the things I noticed, Kevin mentioned it in the introductory statements, but in your terms of reference, there's some processing components to that. It doesn't actually specify a time limit for speakers. It's pretty general. So I noticed you said 5 minutes. Is that, like, we can make some process improvements to the terms of reference, if that would be helpful to have it just listed in your terms of reference. So that was one of the possibilities. There's also limits to number of people speaking, so how many times people are coming up to make some of those more complicated discussions a little bit easier, if that was helpful. So I'm just looking for some suggestions on that, but would that be something that would be helpful for you?
Yeah, it would. And another suggestion would be 2 lecterns with 2 mics. If possible. Has this been discussed in the past? I see Walter smiling.
So people are passing each other.
That's right. That's right. It's awkward when there's 2 people against each other going to the same mic. So if we could set up 2 tables or have 2 lecterns opposite each other and folks can go to either one, maybe that will just kind of streamline the meetings a little bit better.
Sorry, just do we ask them to sit down in between, or do we just say, like, you have one shot at the microphone and then please sit down, or no?
In general, kind of, well, it depends on the flow of the meeting, but in general, I believe if someone has, they may come up, make their points, and so, someone on the other side of the application may come up and say something, and they may want to have, say something to that, so.
It triggers a new.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes a little back and forth as in terms of like having limits on everything. I think it's a good idea, but they should be, I'll say firm but flexible, because depending on the application, you don't want people walking away and say, well, they didn't even let me speak, or, I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say, so.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I think you guys do a great job in, just emphasizing that if you hear something that somebody said that you were going to say, you don't need to repeat it because we've heard it. We're taking notes, things like that. So that keeps it orderly also. So I think that's a good thing that's done well now, actually, to be honest.
Thank you.
But further to that, or just following up on that, 2 lecterns? Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, the concern there is that because they're recorded, so it's not as easy as just putting another lectern somewhere else. We need to have a camera there, and so there's a lot more to it than just having 2 lecterns. So people should be able to see who's speaking, and it has to be mic'd and all that.
Yeah, my
So
suggestion.
that's a technical thing we'd have to overcome.
I think Kevin suggested before, and I'll repeat it, is just use the end council member position, and there's no cost.
Not much.
Yeah, then following up with his discussion, maybe a compromise would be have staff and the applicant at that one, and the public can go up and down to this one,
Okay.
right? Just as a hybrid or a possible interim solution, if they don't want to spend money on a brand-new lectern like that, is maybe just use that one for the applicant and staff. So you might have to flip your table over, Walter, when you're here, but, and then that one's cambered and mic'd anyways, and then just have the public come up and down to this one here.
Okay.
Just as
yeah.
a suggestion.
Yeah, we can look at a variety of things, but if there's other of those process components in your terms of reference that are really a big stickler for you, if you could just email us any specific details, that wouldn't be done right away, but we can definitely look at improvements that could be made to that.
Just a comment is, I think the last terms of reference were approved maybe back in September, correct?
There was, they changed the overall ones, but this would just be focused on the Committee of Adjustment, not the overall, because we were looking at it today, and there's not reference, if it's silent in the Committee of Adjustment terms of reference, it usually would go back to the overall, but it's pretty silent on some things, so this would just be able to clarify that further a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to suggest maybe when things like that happen at a council level, if that information can get distributed to us. The only reason why I know that is because I follow the council agendas, but not everyone else on the committee would follow it. So, if things like that can be just, sent around, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
So to clarify, we're updating the terms of reference that the speakers do have 5 minutes each. That's the goal for that one?
If that's your desire, I noticed you said that today, like in the normal terms of reference, it's 10 minutes, but if 5 minutes is better for you, then we can do 5 minutes.
Okay.
But still adding some flexibility.
Right, 5 with flexibility is good if it's a large group.
Because it's gone way over 5 sometimes when it gets protracted, and I think it's fair, like you say, to cut them off leaves a bad taste in people's mouth, and you're going to tick people off. So I like the 5-minute warning for everybody, so they're aware of it, but then usually it gets bent completely or ignored as the meeting progresses, because an issue comes up that you get a lot of back and forth, and so you go way beyond the 5, and I'm okay with that, but I think you got to start with a 5-minute warning.
Yeah, sometimes we need the 5 minutes in a meeting.
Yeah.
Other times, we can
use 5 here just to expand the meeting tonight.
Okay, great. And if there's any other ones, just email them over, because there's always little details.
Sorry, I have one more comment in regards to the 5 minutes. And we've had some nights where we have maybe 30 people from the public. What I'd like to see is a little bit more organization when it comes to who can speak and when. So if we have a list of delegates who are going to speak, then I think that we should go by a list and call the person up from the public, Mr. Smith, it's now, you would like to speak, so come up. I'd just like to see a little bit more organization because it goes on, and people come up, then they sit down, then they come back up. It's just not organized. My suggestion would be to have a list of who actually from the public wants to speak. I think that would sort of contain everybody, and then we could control who's at each mic. Then they would have 5 to 10 minutes to talk, and then it would be the next person on the list. I just feel it's too free-flowing right now, and it goes on and on and on. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, free-flowing, it's a public, public hearing under the Planning Act, and basically it's come as you are kind of thing. I agree, maybe a sign-in sheet or something, just kind of give us a rough idea of how things will go. But I mean, if someone's not on the list, they want to speak, let them speak. That's the way I say.
That's absolutely true, but I just think that we need to have a little bit more control of those larger meetings when they go on and on and on. And I mean, if you're saying, okay, Mr. Smith, you've put your name down to speak, please come up, I think that would give them the opportunity to fully engage, and then the next person could come up. I just would think it would be a little bit more organized. Rather than it go on and on and on. Because we've had these run-on conversations where people just hang around and they've really said the same thing 10 times.
Yeah, I was going to say, might be good in that regards, because sometimes we get a sizable crowd here, and you wonder, is everyone going to speak? And you might have, you don't know. So, yeah, maybe it is a good idea. To, like I say, just sort of give you an idea of, how to handle the meeting. And, if there's a long list of people, then yeah, you're going to be hard on that 5 minutes. But if it's a potentially contentious application, only a few people, then maybe you can be more flexible with it.
And I think if they, at the end, say, I need to say something else, then that's fine. But it would just go in a logical order. And we would still be in control of that whole organic thing that happens sometimes with all those people that just come in because they want to, be heard. And I get that. But sometimes it goes on, and our meetings have lasted till 11 o'clock. Some meeting, I think, was 11:30. I'm just saying maybe we could contain it a little better. Have them sign in maybe, like at the doctor's office. Here I'm signing in.
So I just want to make a comment that right now on our notices of hearing, we do ask them, whoever wants a Zoom link, that is, to register. So, but not necessarily anyone who wants to sort of attend the meeting. It's just if you want the Zoom link, register by this date and time to get the link. But also because it's a public meeting, no matter, we can say, let us know if you want to talk, but if just anyone shows up, they have to be able to talk. Yeah. So, yeah.
One of the, I'm so sorry.
Just to give it some body and to get it sort of flowing so there's not that big mess happening where people are saying, I can't hear you. They're yelling from down there. I just think it would be a little bit more organized. That's my thought.
Perhaps it would give the eager folks that come in the first opportunity to speak, because we could go off a list to begin, and then once we're done the list, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the application? And we can go off script, off the list, but perhaps the eager ones that signed up will give the point of the other people that come in so they don't have to repeat it. Because they would come in prepared with their notes, knowing they will be speaking 4 or 5 minutes. So I can see, there's some structure to the list, but we don't hold to the list when we're in the meeting, because anyone can, like Delhara said, anyone can speak that comes.
What I was going to say, for a typical public meeting, like just on a different type of application, you would ask for a list of delegates. So anybody who wanted to speak to it would have their name signed up, kind of thing, in a list. And then you could say anybody else would like to speak. Usually the property owner would come first. They would say their piece, the list of delegates, and then the property owner could come back up and then answer any questions that they had. So it's more collected. It's not back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, that's what I try to do generally, is kind of collect the questions from people and then say, okay, when then the applicant comes back, I'll say, okay, this question, and this question, and just go off the notes.
Yeah, when I chaired, I found that to be a point of confusion. It's something I have to learn. But it was bring the applicant up. So Delhara will speak, bring an applicant up, then the committee, then the public. And then I'm thinking, then is it back to the committee now, or is it to the applicant to speak and then the committee? And so that, to me, I'm trying to get in my head, Kevin, you very well, same with you, Adam, of who's going to speak next. Because as I looked at the agenda, I was kind of, okay, now who's up next? So for me personally, to have that laid out, but I think I just need to watch the pros do it a little bit more before I can get really comfortable with who's coming next.
I think that's a good point, and I think it also will go in the minutes as the names of the people that want to speak, so they'll be recorded in the minutes as well.
Yeah, see, in the. Maybe you're still on. Sorry, there we go. Yeah, sorry, just following up that, I know Walter's, again, saying it's just the decision, but if I look at just a textbook Google definition of the minutes, it's meant to be a written record of a meeting discussions, decisions, and actions. So it is a record of the discussions as well. It's not a he said, she said, but it's like, a number of residents came up and voiced their objection because of this, this, and this. I mean, those are legitimate things to put in a minutes, in my opinion, especially if council's reading it quickly and deciding whether or not they're going to support or not support us in an appeal. I think the fact that, the minutes reflect 20 people spoke and they were all against and blah, blah, blah. And it was, whatever. So I think it's important to be more than just the decision in the minutes. I think it's got to have discussions too. Okay.
And that's why I said, we'll look at a whole variety of them and try and pick apart the best parts from each of them to try and come up with a better solution, and then vet it with clerks and legal to make sure they're all on side as well.
Okay, not to, I am going to go back to that. Is this okay, Mr. Chair? I'm going back to this. And Walter was speaking about the reasons, laying out the reasons, and that's the decision we make. We vote on the reasons for the decision. And right now, our generic reasons are the 4 tests, and that's really all it should be. But are we being asked to go into more detail about why the 4 tests have been met? Is that the reasons that we're putting down? Because I think if we did that, there would be many reasons. There would be more words than resolutions and conditions in the reasons for some cases of why we decide what we would decide. And then we all have to agree that that's the reason why we decided for this. Like Kevin may have a different reason why he thinks it's minor than I do. And then you might not be comfortable voting for my reason on the minor variance. So am I misunderstanding that we have to say our reasons for how it met the tests? I'll leave it at that.
No, I don't necessarily think so. I think the decision is unanimous, but that's just a yay or nay. But you can have your own reasons for supporting or opposing the motion, and you can give them in your rationale when you're making the motion. You can say, I support or don't support the variance because I think it meets this test, this test. It only has to fail on one of those 4 tests. You can say it might meet the intent of the OP and zoning, but it's not minor or it's not appropriate for the development and use of the property. And I can say, well, I don't think it meets, the 3rd one or the 4th one. We both agree that we don't support the motion. That's the end result, is the unanimous decision was a for or against, like it passes or it fails. But reasons leading up to that, I think you do that in the motion. And in our discussion, I think that's where the minutes encapsulate the discussion that the committee had. The committee weighed the evidence of the public that was given more weight than planning report that happened to support it. I think that's what happens, and if you just put a decision and council goes, well, staff were in favor of this, there's no notes about, or no minutes didn't reflect that 20 people showed up against, it just says the decision. Well, that's a dumb decision. Why'd they go against staff? Let's appeal this. I think it's got to reflect that a lot of people spoke and the committee gave a lot of weight to the public. Even though staff supported it, they felt it wasn't, minor or so-and-so and so-and-so, and that was the unanimous decision, or it could have been a split decision, but still a decision that's being made. So anyways, I think it's all a big package there for you, but.
Right, that goes back to the minutes being more detailed, not the resolution, because if I understood Walter correctly, if we put our reasons in the resolution and then we vote on that, that gets forwarded in the minutes. But it would be too long to write, and I like what Kevin's saying, that we capture what's going on with the reasons brought forward by the public, and that be captured in the minutes also. And sorry to go back to this. I just want to be clear on how we're moving forward with it.
And I think that's part of the challenge. That's why I want to go through a whole bunch of variety to see how they're all worded, because I found a lot that just go with the 4 tests alone, and it doesn't say anything. So it's not very helpful, right? So it's trying to find the rationale of what brought you to that decision, because that's ultimately what we want to make sure that council knows and understands what brought you to there. So if there is some I don't like it for this, I don't like it for that, then you can talk about that before you bring that up to say, for this reason, I'm going to say blah, blah, blah. And so we'll look at a whole bunch of different options for you, and we'll make some documents for you. We're just looking at the early stages right now to see what the best opportunity for you will be.
Yeah, just to jump on that, I looked at City of Toronto, and with I think their legal budget is $60 million, $20 million is just internal. And their Committee of Adjustment decisions, even on refusal of big things, it'll just say 4 tests. That doesn't meet the 4 tests, that's it. And yeah, going back to the minutes, that's where it say, well, member Antonitis agreed that it was this, but, member so-and-so disagreed with this. I've seen that on, even though they reach a decision, it'll list that there was some kind of, exactly correct, back and forth.
So moving on, if that's okay.
Sorry, just one thing I want to add is, I know the clerks kind of have a template for other committees, but I mean, the thing that has to be looked at is no other committee, as far as I know, does quasi-judicial hearings. So just like a court, you have a record of what transpired. So this is where I think our minutes have to be different than other committee, than just saying resolution was passed, first and seconded by this, and that's it. I mean, like I say, we don't have a transcribe or a transcript or anything like that, but a general sense of the minutes, what happened, I think, be useful for council. We're going to say, well, okay, that went down. Okay, let me just skim through the tape and see.
And that's why I said, we'll look at a whole bunch to see exactly how they've written them, what style, what format, and how much detail and how little detail. So that will give us a pretty good understanding, and then we can talk to clerks and legal to make sure we're solid legal footing and solid clerk position footings as well. So we're going to be doing some investigation as part of this to come up with some revised templates for you.
Thanks.
So the next thing that we were looking at is, and Kevin mentioned, Adam mentioned this, that there was a potential policy for withdrawals and refunds of some fees. We have had some examples of other places that have percentages that they suggest, and it would come back to the committee that somebody would request with a refund of some level. It wouldn't be usually 100%, but it has some level. So is that something that would be helpful?
Okay. You want to go ahead, Dan, first?
Oh, thanks, Adam. I want to go back. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't want to go back. Yeah, I like that idea, but I feel like the applicant may not know that's an option. So when it has been offered, I can remember Dylan offering it for the land severance on the escarpment, for the not-for-profit. Is that right? Bruce Trail? Yeah. So that it was offered in that case. And I think it was, to review it at 100%, but I can't exactly remember those details. But I don't know if they would have known to ask for it. So I like this idea. I just want that the people that maybe these not-for-profits know that it's an option when they, I don't know, that'd be tricky, right? Because then everyone's going to ask for it.
To be fair, the ones I've seen are not related to not-for-profits. They're more deferrals or withdrawals that somebody just decides, I want this committee of adjustment, like the minor variance, and then they go, oh, I don't think I want it, based on something they've heard or something like, or some further decision. So they might withdraw at any point, like after they've submitted, and then like a couple weeks in, they go, I don't want to do this anymore, or they want to defer. And so there's different refund policies for that. For the waiver entirely for not-for-profits, you're right, that is a very slippery slope. And that was part of something that the fee review that the town did, but we're looking at potentially doing a planning fee review, and I would try to put to that type of specific circumstance as part of that study to have some solid research about how to do that versus a straightforward withdrawal because they just don't want to proceed.
Just to add on to that, I know we discussed it previously, but for the committee members I think we definitely need, perhaps even on the application form itself, and this can inform applicants like who are, maybe thinking, is this the way to go? Basically that at this, after this point, and this point, what the refunds would be, like whether staff has acted upon it and circulated, or if it's just preliminary, like if someone, puts an application in one day and then decides the next day, I've changed my mind. I mean, that's a refund is going to be different than someone, the day before our meeting and says, you know what, I'm done with it. Because I think last term we actually had one application and they looked for a refund, and there was a report, I don't know if it was from finance or staff, that sort of said, well, Guelph does this. We did, and we basically had to barter in front of, like, first of all, the applicant was very angry because they just looked at what was in the report and said, well, thinking this is what we were going to apply to their application on the refund. So, yeah, basically, if, it can be sort of set out ahead of time, then it eliminates a lot of, like I say, one application might be this, and then, and they're going to say, well, I looked back, and that application got, all the money back, and, so some kind of classification.
And that's what I've seen is that it's just a uniform policy that you can decide to apply or not. There is costs to circulation, to time to review and stuff like that, and that has to be taken into consideration when you're refunding fees as well. So there is those components. So we can work on that probably in the new year, looking at a policy for that, if that's what's approved.
Yes, I'd like to see the policy. I'm just trying to think of how that's going to work in my head, because anyone that comes to the lectern has been through a staff report, a circulation, and so I think you're referring to them withdrawing even before they see us. So in that case, would we have to vote?
The examples I think of is, I thought once there was a mess up with staff and they found out they didn't need it or something, if I recall. Something like that, where we offered to rebate it. And I can't remember why the Bruce Trail got a reduction, if that was just off the cuff.
It was December.
We did the church here too, the Roman Catholic Church, for I can't remember, parking reduction, but I don't know why that one came out of the blue. Because like McNally's been here, there's others that have been here, the hospital's been here. We haven't reduced those, so it seems to be up like hit and miss.
And the town has a policy with regard to nonprofits. That grant doesn't really consider applications, but I think we would look at that as well as doing when we look at the fee schedule itself, if there is something, because there is a huge potential. There's tons of nonprofits that could potentially apply. So we have to balance that, because there's costs to reviewing the applications as well. We're definitely talking about those withdrawals or deferrals or other things that they're just not even coming to the floor, or they're coming and then they just don't want it, or they withdraw, or they don't get it and they still want a refund. The work has already been done, so that's part of the fees as well.
Something I was going to add is, I was just thinking about the fees, and going back to the application form, because I know they just passed, I think last Monday? I think or it was a meeting before that. No, I think it was a Monday. The fees bylaw was updated. And I also, in the schedule we have adjournments in there. Is that clearly stated on the form that if someone requests an adjournment, that there'll be a fee of, I think it's 158 or something like that? Because if not, like I say, just maybe have even just an excerpt of the fees that might be applicable, if they decide they want to adjourn or whatever like that. If not, maybe some people will say, I don't want to pay 158, so let's just proceed and I'll make myself ready.
I can check that. I'm not quite sure, but we can check that. Just the last thing that we are suggesting is potential for planning staff to present recommendations and answer policy questions. So as part of the normal list of people to present as well, that might give you some more policy context. I'm just not sure if you would like that or if you don't need that.
Yeah, is that sort of the idea I had, saying, more so geared toward maybe when a new term comes in, that, train people what the objectives of the official plan are, because, it's quite an onerous document to look through, especially if you're the first time on the committee. And, there's a lot of irrelevant stuff like, prohibition on bone boiling and stuff like that. I mean, that's not going to be relevant to the committee, but, there is planning policies in there that is. So I think something like that would definitely be welcome.
So you don't need it like for each application. Like some of them are very simple, very obviously. But is that something that would be helpful or not?
I think we already get that in the planning reports. The background to the staff reports have policy interpretations for us. And we usually have a planner sitting here or online to answer planning related questions and policy interpretations, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's already in the staff report.
That was the last of our suggestions for recommendations, but do you have any additional ones that you'd like us to consider? Not to put you on the spot.
Give us a moment to
Go into closed session.
Yeah, one thing, and I was talking to Fabia about it, is last term we all had tablets issued to us. And for those of us who were returning, we had to hand them back in, because they said the operating system was out of date, which actually it wasn't. And there was kind of a staff was, well, other committees will ask for the same thing too. But I think the mandate of our committee is a lot different in that, these other committees are not doing site visits. They're not visiting properties, where those tablets were great. As long as you didn't lose the pen that came with them, you could just jot things right down on the PDF or whatever like that. So, yeah, not necessarily a budget thing, because I don't know what they did with the tablets we returned, because they were actually over-spec'd and would have served for another 4 years. But I think something like that is, it's a tool that we it's useful in the field. So I know it's not so much going to the council process, but it's the overall process.
I can ask about that. I cannot promise anything on that one.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So with that brings our meeting to a close. So we're adjourned at 8:15 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Recording stopped.